take her as payment for the debt. He refused, but one look at her changed everything. John had always been a man of principle. In his small town, everyone knew him as honest, hard-working, and fair.
He ran a modest hardware shop that he had inherited from his father, and though life had never been easy, he had managed to keep his family comfortable. His wife, Anna, helped in the shop on busy days, and their 2 children, Michael and Emma, were the pride of their lives. They did not have much, but they had enough, and they had each other. John believed that hard work, honesty, and a clear conscience were worth more than any wealth. Life, however, had a way of testing even the strongest of people. John's longtime friend, Mark, had been struggling with money for years, but John had lent him small sums occasionally, trusting that Mark would pay him back. Over time, the loans grew larger, and Mark's desperation became more obvious. John had never wanted to see his friend fail completely, but when Mark came to him one rainy afternoon with a desperate plea, John felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Mark's eyes were sunken, and his clothes looked worn and dirty, as if he had been working too hard or not eating enough. He leaned heavily on the fence outside John's shop, wringing his hands nervously. "John," he began, his voice shaking, I don't know what to do. I can't pay you back. I've tried everything, but it's impossible." John listened patiently, though unease spread through him. He had been worried about Mark's finances for a while, but he never expected what came next. Mark hesitated, swallowing hard. There might be another way," he said slowly, almost in a whisper. John frowned, but he had a feeling he would not like what was coming.
"What do you mean?" he asked carefully.
Mark looked down at the ground, shame written all over his face. Then he said words that froze John's blood. "You could take Lily!" Mark's voice barely carried over the wind. "Take her as payment for the debt!" John felt as though the world had stopped spinning. He blinked, hoping he had heard him wrong. "What did you just say?" he asked, his voice tight. Mark repeated it, almost pleading this time. "I can't pay you in money, John. Take her. Take Lily, and the debt will be cleared."
"You won't have to wait for me. You'll get something in return."
John's heart pounded. Lily was Mark's only daughter, a sweet, gentle girl who had always smiled at everyone in the neighborhood. She was no more than 12, and she was as innocent as a morning sunrise. The idea of taking her as payment was not just shocking, it was unimaginable. But I cannot do that, John said finally, his voice trembling with anger and disbelief. "No debt, no matter how large, is worth harming a child. Best, that is not payment, it is cruelty."
Mark's face fell.
Breath. He looked desperate, almost pleading.
"John, please, I have no choice."
"You don't understand. The money I owe, Bear. If I can't pay it, I'll lose everything. You've helped me so many times already." "Please, just consider it." John shook his head. He could see the fear and hopelessness in Mark's eyes, but he could not ignore what was right. "I cannot consider it," he said firmly. "I will not take a child as payment." "Best. If you cannot pay me back in money, we will find another way. But this is wrong in every possible way." Mark turned away, muttering under his breath, his shoulders slumping as though the weight of the world had fallen upon him. First, John watched him for a moment, feeling a mix of pity, anger, and unease. He knew Mark was desperate, but desperate men could make dangerous decisions. The thought that Mark might try to do something foolish without thinking about the consequences terrified him. That night, John could not sleep.
He kept replaying Mark's words over and over in his mind.
The image of Lily, small and innocent, filled him with fear. What if Mark really expected him to agree? What if someone else heard the suggestion and acted on it? John's conscience would not allow him to even entertain the idea. He tossed and turned, thinking about the future, the debt, and the impossible choice that had been thrown before him. The next morning, John went about his work in the shop, but his mind was elsewhere. Every customer, every passing car, every sound of the town seemed distant. He thought about Mark's family, how a father's despair could drive him to unimaginable suggestions. He also thought about Lily and the responsibility of protecting the innocent from the consequences of others' mistakes. John realized that life sometimes presented people with situations where there was no easy answer, only the right one. And the right answer, he knew, was always to protect those who could not protect themselves. Over the following days, Mark avoided John. The tension between them was thick, but John held his ground. He began making small plans, thinking about how he could help Mark without compromising his values. He considered offering guidance on how Mark could earn money legally, how he could work extra hours, or even how John might personally help him manage smaller repayments. John was determined to resolve the situation without surrendering to fear or despair, without allowing desperation to override morality. During this time, John's family noticed his unusual quietness. Anna asked him gently one evening if something was wrong, and John hesitated before telling her just enough of the story. He left out the worst details, not wanting to frighten the children. Anna listened quietly, her hand resting on his shoulder, and nodded.
"You're right," she said softly.
No one should ever be forced to do something so wrong. We'll find a way to help, but we won't cross that line. Pshh. John felt a surge of gratitude. Even in his family, he was not alone in carrying the burden of this impossible situation. Meanwhile, John observed Mark from a distance. He saw the man's struggles, the late nights at work, the endless worry etched into his face, and the despair that seemed to follow him like a shadow. John felt compassion for his friend, but never once wavered in his resolve. No matter how dire the circumstances, no human life, especially a child's, could ever become a commodity. It was during this time of inner turmoil that John began to notice something else. How fragile life could be, and how easily moral boundaries could be tested. He remembered lessons his father had taught him about honor and integrity, about standing firm when others might bend under pressure. He realized that the true test of character was not in the moments of ease, but in the moments when the right choice was also the hardest choice. Days turned into a week, and the heavy tension of the situation did not lessen. John received calls from friends and neighbors offering advice, some sympathetic, others practical. "Maybe you should just take the money and let it go," one suggested. Another said, "Sometimes life forces you to make hard choices." "Don't let loyalty destroy you." John listened politely but ignored the advice. He knew the right path was not always the easiest one, and no amount of pressure would make him waver. One rainy afternoon, as John closed the shop for the day, he saw Mark walking along the street. The man looked defeated, his eyes hollow with worry. John felt a pang of sympathy, but also a renewed determination. He approached Mark, not with anger, but with a calm, firm tone. "We will figure this out," John said. "But nothing you suggested can ever happen. I will not allow it." "You owe me money, yes, but you will not make someone else pay for your mistakes." Mark nodded slowly, silently acknowledging the truth in John's words. As John walked home that evening, he felt a strange mix of relief and tension. Relief that he had not compromised his values, and tension because he knew the challenges ahead would not be easy. He also knew that life had a way of presenting opportunities in the most unexpected forms. He had no idea that a single encounter just around the corner would soon change everything. Not for the worse, but in a way he could never have imagined. In the quiet of his home, John thought about the lessons of this week. The fragility of human morals under pressure, the courage it took to stand firm, and the responsibility each person carried toward protecting the innocent. He resolved that no matter what happened next, he would face it with honesty, courage, and a steadfast heart. That principle, he knew, would guide him through even the most impossible situations. Little did John know, the moment that would test his convictions even further was already waiting, just one look away from changing his life forever. After that rainy afternoon, John found it harder to focus on his daily life than ever before. The shocking suggestion from Mark haunted him. He could not stop thinking about Lily, the young girl whose innocence had been threatened by her father's desperation. Every time he closed his eyes, he imagined her small face, wide-eyed and trusting, and it filled him with both anger and resolve. How could anyone even consider using a child to pay a debt? The thought made his stomach churn. But alongside the anger, John felt a strong sense of responsibility. Not just for himself, but for anyone who could not protect themselves. John tried to put the matter out of his mind during the day, focusing on his shop. He arranged the shelves, helped customers find tools, and counted inventory, all the while keeping one eye on the clock. He wanted to check if Mark had come back to speak with him again, and he also worried about what might happen if Mark tried to take action without thinking. The uncertainty weighed heavily on his chest, like a constant pressure. He found himself sighing more often, staring out the shop window, and worrying about things he had no control over. Anna noticed the change in John almost immediately. One evening, as she was washing dishes in their small kitchen, she glanced at him and asked gently, "You've been quiet all week, John. What's wrong?" "You're worried, aren't you?" John hesitated, rubbing his forehead. He wanted to protect her from the details, but he could not hide the truth entirely. "It's Mark," he said finally. "He's in trouble, but it's more than that." He suggested something terrible, something I could never agree to. Something about Lily." Anna paused, letting the words sink in. Her eyes widened slightly, but she kept her voice calm. "You mean pay?" "He suggested taking his daughter to pay a debt?" she asked, and John nodded. "That's horrifying." "Oh, how could anyone even think that?" she whispered. John looked down at the table, feeling the weight of the situation pressing on him from every side.
I don't know."
He admitted, "I don't know." He admitted, "I refused, but the problem is still there."
Despair. He's desperate. And desperation makes people dangerous.
Anna reached over and held his hand. "You did the right thing, John."
No debt is worth hurting a child. You must protect what's right, no matter how hard it is. And we'll help, in any way we can, without compromising our values. John felt a small sense of comfort in her words, but the unease in his heart remained. He knew that refusing Mark's suggestion was only the first step. The challenge now was how to handle the situation practically without letting anyone get hurt. The next day, John tried to talk to Mark again. He found him sitting on the old bench outside his home, staring at the ground. John approached slowly, his mind weighing every word. "Mark," he said, "we need to figure out how to resolve this without harming anyone. You owe me money, yes, but no one should ever be part of a solution that risks their safety or dignity." Mark looked up, his eyes red from lack of sleep or perhaps from crying. "John, I don't know what to do."
I feel trapped. The money is gone.
"Everything I tried failed. I don't want Lily to suffer, but I don't know what else to offer." His voice broke as he spoke, and John felt a pang of sympathy. He understood desperation. He had experienced hardship himself. But he also knew that this was a moment that tested both morality and courage.
Bale, you have to find another way, John said firmly yet gently. You can work, save, and repay me in time.
I am willing to wait and help, but no one will ever become collateral for a mistake. You must understand that. Mark sighed heavily. He seemed torn between fear and hope. Barras, I suppose you're right, he admitted reluctantly.
But what if I can't manage it?
What if I fail again?
You will find a way, John said calmly. And if you don't, I will help you.
There is always a way to do the right thing, even when it seems impossible. But you must promise me you will never put Lily in danger. Mark nodded slowly, a flicker of relief crossing his face. John left him sitting there, thinking about the words he had just spoken. While he had stopped the immediate danger, John realized the struggle was far from over. Mark's debt still loomed, and the worry about what might happen next stayed with him like a shadow. As days turned into weeks, John began to see the depth of Mark's struggles. He noticed how tired and stressed the man looked, how his clothes were worn, and how he seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. It pained John to see a friend in such distress, but he refused to let pity compromise his moral compass. He began helping Mark in small, practical ways, offering advice on extra work opportunities, showing him how to manage money more carefully, and providing encouragement. Every step was done without judgment, only guidance and support. Meanwhile, John observed Lily from a distance whenever he could. He noticed her kindness to neighbors, her eagerness to help her little brother with schoolwork, and her natural curiosity about the world. The girl's presence was a reminder of why he had refused Mark's terrible suggestion. She was not just a child. She was a symbol of innocence and hope in a world where desperation sometimes clouded judgment. John felt a growing sense of protectiveness toward her, even though he knew he had no legal or personal claim. This was purely a matter of conscience. One afternoon, while walking through the town square, John overheard a group of people gossiping about Mark's financial troubles.
Some suggested harsh solutions, some whispered about shortcuts, and a few even implied taking extreme measures.
John's heart sank as he realized how easily fear and desperation could lead people astray.
He knew he had to act not just as a friend, but as a guardian of moral responsibility.
Determined to protect Lily and prevent any reckless action, John began thinking strategically. He made a small plan for what to do if Mark ever considered acting on desperation again. He would speak directly, calmly, but firmly. He would remind Mark of the consequences and the moral boundaries that must never be crossed. And he would continue helping, not out of pity, but to show that there was always a better way to solve problems. At the same time, John's personal life began to feel the strain of constant worry. He found himself distracted at the shop, forgetting to restock items or double-check the cash register. He worried about his children, wondering how to explain the complexity of adult problems without frightening them. He worried about Anna, concerned about the strain on her patience and kindness. Yet through all this, he maintained his composure outwardly, keeping his family calm while privately struggling with tension. One evening, John sat on the porch after a long day sipping tea as the sky turned orange with sunset. He reflected on the past weeks, the impossible suggestion, and the difficult choices he had faced. He thought about the meaning of responsibility, the weight of moral choices, and the courage required to stand firm in a world that often pressured people to do what was convenient rather than what was right. In that quiet moment, he realized something important. The true challenge of life was not merely surviving hardship, but facing it with integrity. Mark's debt, the fear, the danger, these were tests of character. And John knew that if he stayed true to his values, he could navigate even the most difficult situations without compromising who he was. He also understood that his actions had consequences beyond himself. By refusing Mark's suggestion, by choosing to protect Lily, he had set an example, not just for Mark, but for the whole town. It was a silent lesson in courage, morality, and the power of standing up for what is right. And though he did not yet realize it, this commitment would lead him to a moment that would change everything. A moment that would prove that even the smallest decisions could have profound impacts.
John's resolve strengthened over time.
Psh! He continued helping Mark, encouraging him to earn money and manage his debt responsibly. He watched over Lily from a distance, ready to step in if necessary. And through it all, he reminded himself every day that no financial trouble, no desperate plea, and no pressure from society could ever justify compromising a person's dignity or safety. That principle became his anchor, guiding him through a storm of fear, uncertainty, and moral complexity. Then, one ordinary afternoon, as John was locking up the shop, he noticed something that made his heart skip a beat fast. Lily was walking along the street carrying a small basket of vegetables, her eyes bright with curiosity and kindness. She smiled at a passing neighbor, helped a younger child tie his shoelaces, and seemed completely unaware of the storm that had surrounded her family in recent weeks. In that moment, John felt a surge of determination. Protecting this girl, guiding her, and helping her family find stability had become more than a moral duty. It had become a personal mission. And so, John prepared himself for what lay ahead, knowing that the weeks and months to come would test not just his patience, but his courage, wisdom, and moral strength. The situation was far from over, but he had made his choice. He would not allow desperation to justify harm. He would not bend to fear or pressure. And he would stand firm no matter what challenges arose. In the quiet of the evening, with the sky darkening and stars beginning to appear, John felt a small spark of hope. Even in the midst of worry and uncertainty, even in the face of moral danger, there was always a way to do the right thing. And that knowledge gave him strength to face whatever came next. The day started like any other, with John opening his small hardware shop and arranging the tools neatly on the shelves. The morning air was crisp, and the town square outside was slowly filling with the usual crowd of neighbors, children going to school and merchants setting up their stalls. John tried to focus on the routine of his work, but his mind kept drifting to Lily. He had seen her from a distance over the past few weeks, helping a neighbor carry groceries, holding the hands of younger children as they walked down the street, and smiling at people with a kindness that made them feel noticed and valued. Past. There was something about her that lingered in his thoughts, a brightness that stood in sharp contrast to the darkness of the situation her family was in. It was just past 10 o'clock when John stepped outside to catch a breath of fresh air. He noticed Lily walking toward the small park at the corner of the street. She carried a bundle of books in her arms, her hair falling loosely around her shoulders. She paused to help a younger boy untangle the strings of his kite, speaking to him softly and patiently. The sight struck John in a way he had not anticipated. He had known her as Mark's daughter, a child in the middle of a difficult situation, but seeing her kindness, her careful attention to others, made him feel something deeper, a sense of admiration, respect, and even hope. John's curiosity and concern drew him closer, though he kept his distance, unsure how to approach. He watched as Lily sat on the park bench and carefully organized her books. She hummed quietly to herself, and her concentration was evident in the furrow of her brow. It was a simple moment, yet it held so much meaning. John realized that she had grown up too quickly, that life had already taught her lessons of responsibility and patience beyond her years. He felt a pang of guilt for ever considering, even in passing, what Mark had suggested. The thought of her being treated as a solution to a debt seemed even more horrifying now that he saw the person she was, a living, breathing young girl, with intelligence, compassion, and courage. Summoning his courage, John finally approached her. "Hello, Lily," he said gently, careful not to startle her. She looked up, her eyes wide, and smiled politely. "Good morning, sir," she replied, her voice soft but confident. There was an honesty in her tone that immediately put John at ease. He hesitated for a moment, unsure of how much to reveal.
I
just wanted to see how you're doing," he said finally. Lily tilted her head slightly, a small frown forming as though she sensed the weight behind his words. "I'm fine, sir. Thank you," she said quietly.
Are you here to talk about my father? John's heart tightened. She had seen through his hesitation, through the concern and tension he had tried to mask.
He nodded slowly. "I wanted to make sure you're safe."
"And to tell you that no one can ever harm you or use you to solve a problem. You have the right to be protected and respected, always." Lily's eyes glistened with a mix of relief and curiosity. She looked down at her hands for a moment, then back at him. "I know my father has made mistakes," she said softly. "But I didn't think anyone would ever care about what I feel. I thought maybe people only saw the trouble my family causes." Her words were quiet but carried a depth that touched John profoundly. He realized in that instant that Lily's life had been filled with more worry and fear than any child should ever face. I care, Lily," John said gently. "And I will help you. Not because of any debt or because it's convenient, but because it's the right thing to do. No one should ever feel like they are worthless or alone."
You are important. Your safety, your happiness, they matter more than anything else.
For a long moment, Lily was silent. Then, as if deciding something important, she set her books down and looked directly at him. I don't know what to say."
"Thank you. I've never had anyone say that to me before,"
she whispered. John nodded, understanding that words could only go so far. Bias. Actions mattered more. Over the next few weeks, John made it a point to check on Lily whenever he could. But sometimes it was a brief conversation in the park. Other times he would pass by her home to make sure everything was okay. Slowly he began to see the layers of her personality. Her curiosity, her intelligence, her small acts of kindness to those around her. But she noticed little details that others missed, like a bird's nest in the trees, or the effort a neighbor had put into planting flowers. Every observation made John admire her even more. She was not just a child caught in a family's financial trouble. She was a person, fully alive and aware, with a spirit that could inspire others. John's own perspective began to shift. He realized that his moral responsibility was not just to refuse the terrible suggestion from Mark, but to actively protect and support Lily. She became a symbol of hope and resilience in his mind. The thought of her being used as collateral for a debt was now unbearable. Each encounter reminded him why he had chosen the hard path, the path of integrity and courage. One afternoon, as they walked together to the small grocery store near the park, Lily began to talk about her dreams.
I want to go to school and become a teacher someday, she said, eyes sparkling with excitement.
"I want to help other children, especially those who don't have much." John listened carefully, nodding, and felt a warmth in his heart. Here was a young girl who, despite all the difficulties she had faced, was thinking not only of herself but of others. He realized that nurturing her potential could change her life, and maybe even the lives of those around her. John decided he would do more than just watch and guide. He offered small but practical help, buying school supplies, arranging tutoring, and even helping her with math problems when she struggled. Each interaction built trust between them.
Lily began to see him as someone who cared, someone reliable and kind. And John, in turn, felt a growing connection, a sense of purpose that he had not expected when he first rejected Mark's shocking suggestion.
But the townspeople began to notice the change in John as well. His friends commented on how he seemed more energetic and focused, and neighbors whispered about how he spent time helping a young girl with schoolwork. Some assumed it was charity, but John knew it was much more than that. It was a responsibility born of conscience, of moral duty, and a growing affection for someone whose life had been at risk due to circumstances beyond her control. John also continued to deal with Mark, who was slowly trying to repay his debts. But now, John's resolve had a new layer. He was not just refusing an immoral suggestion. He was actively protecting Lily. Best. Whenever he spoke to Mark, he did so with calm authority, making it clear that no action against Lily would ever be tolerated. Mark, perhaps sensing the depth of John's commitment, became more careful in his own behavior, realizing that John was serious about protecting the girl. Back. Through it all, John learned something essential about human nature. People could be desperate, selfish, or reckless, but they could also be kind, responsible, and capable of change. By standing firm and taking action, he could influence not only the outcome of a situation but also the people involved, and in Lily he saw the potential for a bright future, one that he could help guide. As days turned into weeks, John and Lily's bond strengthened. They shared small conversations about life, dreams, and school. John watched her grow in confidence, seeing her smile more often and even laugh freely, something he had not seen in her the first time he met her. And each day, he reminded himself why he had refused Mark's suggestion. The choice to protect her had not just prevented harm, it had opened the door to something remarkable. Then, one afternoon, a moment came that would forever change John's perception. Lily had been helping her mother with household chores, and when she noticed John outside the window, she ran to greet him. Her smile was wide, her eyes sparkling with genuine joy. John felt a wave of emotion he had not expected, a mix of relief, admiration, and something like awe. In that instant, he understood fully what he had already suspected. Protecting Lily was not just the right thing to do. It was a privilege. From that day forward, John made a silent vow. He would do everything in his power to ensure that Lily's life was safe, full of opportunity, and filled with hope. The moral choice he had made weeks ago, the decision to refuse a debt at the cost of a child's dignity, was no longer a question. It was a commitment, a responsibility, and a mission that would define the days and months ahead. And so, what had begun as a shocking and impossible situation transformed into a journey of hope, courage, and the deep human connection that comes when one chooses to act with integrity. The bond between John and Lily, forged in the quiet moments of care, guidance, and understanding, would grow stronger with each passing day, shaping not only their lives but the very meaning of what it meant to do the right thing, even in the hardest circumstances. John had never imagined that one small decision could change his life so profoundly. Refusing Mark's shocking suggestion had been difficult. But now, watching Lily grow in confidence and kindness, he understood just how important that choice had been. She had become more than a symbol of morality or a reason to act responsibly. She was a young girl whose life he felt personally responsible for protecting, and with that sense of responsibility came action. Action that would test his courage, patience, and resolve in ways he had not yet imagined. The first step John took was to confront Mark directly. He knew that talk alone would not be enough. Mark had to understand the seriousness of the situation and the consequences of any reckless choices. One morning, John walked to Mark's small, worn-down house. The door creaked open, and Mark appeared, surprised to see him.
"John, what are you doing here?" he asked cautiously.
Brace.
I came to talk, Mark, John said firmly but calmly. I want to make sure you understand something clearly. No one will ever harm Lily or be used in place of your debt. I will not allow it, and you must not even consider it.
Mark's shoulders slumped, and he looked down at the ground. I understand, he murmured. I don't know what I would do if anything happened to her because of me. You must start taking responsibility for your actions, Mark, John continued. Paying me back will not be easy, but there are ways to do it honestly and safely. I am willing to help you figure this out. But the first rule is that Lily's safety and dignity come first. Do you understand?
Mark nodded slowly, his eyes wet with remorse.
I understand, he said. I won't let anything happen to her. I swear it. John knew that words alone could not ensure safety. He began helping Mark practically, guiding him on how to earn money, manage his expenses, and gradually repay the debt. He suggested extra work opportunities and even helped him apply for temporary projects in town. Sometimes, John lent Mark small sums to keep him afloat, but always with clear boundaries and guidance. He wanted Mark to learn responsibility, not depend on charity, and slowly Mark began to realize that there was a better way to handle his problems than desperate suggestions. At the same time, John's relationship with Lily continued to deepen. He began teaching her small practical skills, helping her with schoolwork, and encouraging her curiosity.
They walked together to the local library, where he showed her how to find books and use information wisely.
He taught her the importance of patience, persistence, and moral courage, sharing small stories from his own life about times when he had to make difficult choices. Lily listened intently, absorbing every word. One afternoon, as they walked back from the library, Lily stopped and looked up at him. "John," she said softly, "do you think people can really change? My father, sometimes he makes me scared, but I want to believe he can be better." John smiled gently, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I believe people can change, Lily," he said.
But change doesn't happen instantly. It takes time, effort, and guidance.
"That's why I'm here, to help your father, and to help you understand that even in difficult situations, there is always a right way to act." As the days went by, John's efforts began to show results. Mark worked harder than ever before, carefully saving money and gradually repaying the debt he owed. He became more aware of the impact of his decisions, especially on Lily, and he began to treat her with greater respect and consideration. The town noticed the change too. Neighbors whispered about how Mark seemed more responsible, and how John had become a mentor not just to Lily, but to her father as well. But despite these improvements, the situation was not without challenges. One morning, John received news that a local contractor had offered Mark a job with a very short deadline and strict conditions. There was a great opportunity to earn money quickly, but it required Mark to work long hours and left little time to manage his family responsibilities.
John worried about the strain this could put on both Mark and Lily.
He went to speak with him immediately. "Mark, this job could help you repay the debt faster," John said. "But it's also risky. You'll be exhausted, and Lily might not have enough support at home. We need to find a balance, work that helps you without harming your family." Mark nodded, understanding the concern in John's eyes. "You're right," he said. "I don't want to fail her again. I'll talk to the contractor and see if we can adjust the schedule." John felt a small sense of relief. It was a reminder that responsibility was not just about financial repayment. It was about protecting those who depended on you, and ensuring that no one was forced into unnecessary hardship.
Around this time, John noticed a new side of Lily.
She began to take initiative, helping her father manage small tasks at home, and even assisting her younger brother with schoolwork. She asked John questions about life, about fairness, and about doing the right thing when situations were difficult. Each question showed her intelligence and her moral awareness, and John realized that he was not only protecting her, he was also helping her grow into a thoughtful, responsible young person. One day, while they were walking through the park, Lily paused and looked at John thoughtfully. "Do you ever get scared when you have to do the right thing?" she asked. John considered the question carefully.
Yes, he said honestly.
Doing the right thing can be scary, especially when it seems like everything is against you. But courage is not about never feeling fear. It's about acting even when you are afraid. Bet.
And that's what makes us stronger. Lily smiled, absorbing his words.
She began to see him not just as a protector, but as a guide and a source of strength. And John, in turn, found a sense of purpose he had never experienced before.
He realized that by standing firm, helping Mark, and protecting Lily, he was creating a ripple effect, changing lives through small, consistent acts of courage and kindness. As the weeks passed, John faced further challenges. Mark sometimes became frustrated with his slow progress, and at times he would make mistakes that risked delaying repayment. Each time, John remained patient but firm, reminding him of the importance of integrity and perseverance.
He would say, "It's not just about the money, Mark. It's about showing that you can handle responsibility."
Mistakes happen, but what matters is that you keep trying the right way. Through it all, Lily observed quietly. She learned from John's patience and from her father's gradual improvement. She began to understand that courage, honesty, and perseverance were not just words, they were actions, demonstrated every day. John's guidance became a living example of how to face difficulties without compromising values. One evening, as John walked home from the shop, he paused to watch Lily playing with her younger brother in the yard. The two children laughed freely, chasing each other and enjoying the simple pleasure of a warm evening. John felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This small moment of joy and innocence was a direct result of the choices he had made. To refuse wrongdoing, to act with integrity, and to support those who could not support themselves. Profound. Protecting Lily and helping Mark was not just about preventing harm, it was about creating opportunity. Opportunity for growth, for learning, and for building a future rooted in values and kindness. By choosing to stand firm, John had transformed a moment of crisis into a journey of hope and change. However, John knew that the path ahead was still full of uncertainty. Mark's debts were not fully repaid, and the pressures of life continued to weigh on the family. Yet John also knew that he had the tools to guide them, the patience to teach, and the moral compass to navigate even the most difficult situations. And with Lily by his side, growing stronger and wiser each day, he felt that the future, while still challenging, could also be bright. One afternoon, a small but meaningful moment occurred. Lily had been struggling with a difficult math problem, and John sat with her, patiently explaining step by step until she understood. She looked up at him, her eyes shining. "Thank you, John," she said softly.
I feel like I can do anything if I try hard enough. John smiled warmly. That's exactly right, Lily.
You can achieve anything, as long as you stay true to yourself and keep trying, and I'll always be here to help when you need it. It was moments like these that reinforced John's belief that standing for what is right, even in the face of difficulty, creates results that go far beyond what one can immediately see. He had saved Lily from a terrible possibility, yes, but he had also nurtured her mind, strengthened her character, and inspired hope in a family that had almost lost it.
By the end of Part 4, John's life had changed in unexpected ways.
He had become a mentor, a protector, and a guiding force for both Lily and her father. His moral courage had been tested repeatedly, and he had passed each test not just with words, but with consistent, responsible action. The town began to see him not just as a shopkeeper, but as a man of integrity, someone whose decisions could shape the lives of others for the better. And though challenges remained, John was ready. He had learned that integrity, patience, and courage were more powerful than fear or desperation. He had learned that protecting the innocent and guiding the responsible could create a ripple of positive change. And he had learned that one person's steadfast commitment to what is right could transform an entire family and perhaps even a community. The weeks had passed slowly but surely, and John could finally see the fruits of his efforts. Mark had been working hard to repay his debt, earning money through small jobs and taking on extra hours wherever he could. John had guided him patiently, showing him ways to save, manage his time, and prioritize the things that truly mattered. Each day, Mark became more responsible and more aware of the impact of his choices, not just on himself but on his family, especially Lily. Lily, meanwhile, was thriving in ways John had only hoped for. She had grown more confident, her laughter returning in full measure, and her eyes sparkling with curiosity and determination. She was no longer a child caught in the shadow of her father's mistakes. She was a young girl with purpose, hope, and dreams she was determined to chase. John felt a deep sense of pride and relief, knowing that the difficult decision he had made weeks ago to refuse Mark's shocking suggestion had led to a positive and lasting change in her life. One crisp morning, John visited Mark's home to check on progress. Mark greeted him at the door, smiling nervously.
"John, I have something to tell you," he said.
"I finally managed to pay back a large part of the debt. I'm still not done, but I promise I'm doing everything I can." John nodded, feeling a mix of relief and satisfaction.
"I can see that, Mark. You've worked hard, and it shows."
But remember, the most important part is not just repaying the money. It's learning how to handle responsibility and care for your family.
Lily's safety, your honesty, and your effort to improve are what matter most.
Mark's eyes filled with gratitude.
I understand, John. I don't know what I would have done without your guidance.
I know I made terrible mistakes, but you've helped me change.
I'm going to keep doing better for Lily and for my family. John felt a warmth in his heart. This was the moment he had been working toward. Not just repayment of a debt, but the restoration of a family, the growth of a young girl, and the reinforcement of values that had almost been lost in desperation. Over the next few days, John spent time with Lily, walking her to school, helping her with homework, and sharing small stories of courage and perseverance. He noticed how she had begun helping her father at home, showing patience and understanding beyond her years. Lily often spoke about her dreams, her desire to learn, and her hope of one day helping others who were struggling, just as John had helped her family. One afternoon, as they sat together in the park, Lily looked up at John and asked,
"Do you think my father will really change completely?"
John smiled gently. "I believe he can," he said. "People can make mistakes, but they can also learn, grow, and become better. It takes effort, honesty, and persistence, but it's possible. But fact that you've seen him try and improve shows that change is happening, even if it's slow."
Lily nodded thoughtfully.
I want to help him too," she said. "I want him to see that we can be stronger together, that we can face problems without hurting anyone." John's heart swelled with pride.
This was exactly the kind of strength he had hoped to nurture in her. Not just courage, but empathy, responsibility, and the ability to guide others toward better choices. He realized that protecting Lily had not only saved her from harm, but had also allowed her to grow into a young leader in her own right. Meanwhile, Mark continued to work diligently. He repaid his debts step by step, never missing a deadline, and slowly but surely rebuilt trust, not just with John, but with his family and the community. Desperation, He learned the value of honesty, persistence, and patience, and he began to see life differently. The fear and desperation that had once driven him to consider reckless solutions were gradually replaced with confidence, determination, and a renewed sense of responsibility. The town began to notice the transformation as well. Neighbors who had once whispered doubts about Mark's character now spoke of his diligence and effort. People admired the changes in Lily, who was now known for her kindness, intelligence, and willingness to help others. And John, who had stood firm in the face of a moral challenge, earned the quiet respect of the community, not through words, but through actions that had changed lives.
One evening, John sat with his family on the porch watching the sunset in brilliant shades of orange and pink.
Anna placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You've done so much, John," she said softly. "You've helped a family, guided a young girl, and stood firm in what you believed was right. I'm proud of you." John smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment he had never known before.
It wasn't easy, he admitted. There were days I didn't know what to do, moments I was afraid of failing, but doing the right thing, protecting the innocent, guiding the responsible, made every challenge worth it.
Their children, Michael and Emma, looked at him with admiration, sensing that their father's actions had made a real difference in the world.
They didn't fully understand the complexity of the situation, but they understood courage, compassion, and integrity, the lessons their father had demonstrated so clearly. In the following weeks, Lily's growth became even more apparent. She began participating actively in school, helping classmates and showing remarkable resilience in the face of challenges. She continued to assist her father at home, now with a sense of pride and responsibility rather than fear. John often watched from a distance, feeling a deep satisfaction knowing that his guidance and his firm moral stance had helped shape her into someone capable of facing life with courage and kindness. Mark, too, had changed in ways that were visible and lasting. He no longer made impulsive decisions, and he treated his family with respect and patience. He had learned that taking the easy way, or acting out of desperation, was never the solution. Instead, he relied on steady effort, honesty, and the guidance of those who cared about him. The debt, once a source of despair, became a reminder of the lessons he had learned and the strength he had developed. John's decision to refuse Mark's suggestion, to protect Lily, and to actively guide both father and daughter had created a ripple effect. It had transformed fear into hope, desperation into responsibility, and despair into opportunity. The family's future, once uncertain and shadowed by a moral crisis, was now filled with promise and potential. One sunny morning, John walked through the park and saw Lily helping a group of younger children learn to read. She looked up, smiled, and waved at him. In that moment, John felt a profound sense of accomplishment. This was more than a moral victory. It was a real, tangible difference in the world. By standing firm, acting with integrity, and guiding others, he had helped create a life full of hope, learning, and kindness. Reflecting on the journey, John realized that the hardest moments often led to the most meaningful changes. He had faced fear, moral dilemmas, and the pressure of impossible circumstances. He had chosen to act with courage and compassion, and in doing so, had transformed not just one life, but the lives of an entire family. In the quiet moments that followed, John felt a deep sense of peace. He understood that life would continue to present challenges, but he also knew that integrity, courage, and compassion would always provide guidance. By refusing to compromise on his principles, he had not only protected an innocent child, but also nurtured growth, responsibility, and hope in a family that had once been on the brink of despair. Lily, standing beside her father, exemplified the result of that moral courage. Her bright eyes, confident smile, and thoughtful words were a testament to what could be achieved when someone chooses the right path, even when it is difficult. And Mark, gradually becoming the father and man he aspired to be, showed that change is possible, even for those who have made mistakes. John's life, too, was changed forever. He had faced a situation that tested not just his patience, but his values, his courage, and his sense of responsibility. He had discovered the power of standing firm, of acting with kindness and integrity, and of believing that even small actions could have profound consequences. The lessons he had learned were not just about morality. They were about hope, human potential, and the transformative power of compassion. And so the family, once threatened by desperation and impossible choices, found a new beginning. Lily thrived, Mark grew responsible, and John's guidance and courage left a lasting impact that would shape their lives for years to come. The debt, the fear, and the moral dilemma had been overcome, not by compromise or shortcuts, but by honesty, effort, and unwavering commitment to what was right. In the end, the story of John, Lily, and Mark became a quiet but powerful reminder. No matter how difficult or impossible a situation may seem, courage, compassion, and integrity can transform despair into hope, fear into growth, and life itself into something brighter, stronger, and full of possibility. John looked at Lily one last time that evening, her laughter echoing across the yard as she played with her little brother, and he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The impossible choice, the moral challenge, the long nights of worry, all of it had led to this, but he knew, without a doubt, that he had made the right decision. By standing firm, protecting the innocent, and guiding those in need, he had changed the course of 3 lives forever. And that, he realized, was worth more than any debt could ever demand.